Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Lynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4. Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Craig Maxwell, our own from the Tarrant County Auditor's Office. After the invocation, please remain standing for the pledge.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioners, if you'll bow your head. Lord, you are our Creator, our Redeemer, our Rock, our Protector, and our Savior. With your blessings, we have what it takes to make this a better place in which to live. We have the wherewithal to be more like your Son, kind, compassionate, understanding, and forgiving. But we can also be judgmental. He was one who could understand how it could be very unfair to be judged without knowing, to be judged just because a few speak to incite. He lived it. Let us take a step back and think before we speak. Those who judge rarely understand. Those who understand rarely judge. Tomorrow is our Independence Day. To all those who served, we say thank you and hope you receive some appreciation and or recognition for the call to duty that we can't possibly comprehend. We live in the land of the free because of the brave, but there are also many who may not have given the ultimate, but they are not to be overlooked. They took care of the home and the family, and to all the wives of the veterans, we say thanks. This country we call home still has the freedom to worship, the freedom to speak, enjoy the freedom of the press, and the right of the people to assemble peacefully. Let us try not to take that away from anybody. Lord, we have many blessings that we can see and feel. We also have more blessings that we cannot see and that we take for granted. 2 Corinthians states, whoever sows sparingly will reap sparingly. Whoever sows generously will reap generously. So let us all be a little more generous with our blessings. We know your Son gave his life so that we may live ours, with the understanding that we may be forgiven of our sins. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Craig. Mr. Manning.
Your Honor, just have one announcement, and it's not as it relates to the agenda today, but just to remind the court that on July 17th, we are not going to have Commissioners Court. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of June the 26th.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. This is the first Tuesday of the month, and so we have the opportunity to recognize our employees who are celebrating anniversaries with us. This is my favorite Tuesday of the month, not because I get to show my inept abilities to pronounce names, but because we get to recognize folks who have meant so much to making Tarrant County what Tarrant County is, and I mean that very sincerely. The work y'all do is outstanding, and I think that because we're so almost accustomed to it that we sometimes fail to realize what a difference you make as employees as you represent Tarrant County. So again, let me thank each and every one of you. Now to kind of talk to you about the routine, especially you newbies, the 5 years. If it sounds like your name, if it's in the alphabetical position of your name, you stand. Because there have been times when I didn't get anywhere near the actual pronunciation of your name. So stand until I've completed all of the 5 years or all of the particular category, and then we'll thank you as a group, and then you can be seated and we'll move to the next group. So starting with our 5-year employees, first is Sherry Adcock, Tax Office. There's Sherry. Christy Brown, County Clerk's Office.
You got that one.
You know, these first few, but there'll be challenges as we move along.
I think you got an easy day.
Robert Chambers, Information Technology. Michael Clark, Public Health. Nina Daco, Public Health. Close. Kristen Docken, Constable Precinct 2. Sandra Greenlee, Human Services. Diane McAllister, Fire Marshal's Office. Jimmy Wynn, Precinct 2. Did I get that one?
Hey, Jimmy, that's right. Perfect. No relation, by the way. No relation.
Well, I have come to the realization that Wynn is somewhat of a common name.
Yes.
Either that or
It's
you have
kinda
a
like Whitley.
whole, well, like Smith. Erica Quinrose, Pretrial Services. Now, that's one of those ones that you're in the alphabet, you know where you are. Okay. Cameron Robbins, Tax Office. Tracy Smith, Sheriff's Department. Sharon Solberg, Public Health.
Shannon.
Why did I say Sharon? It is Shannon. Crystal Steen, Resource Connection. And Arthur Wilder, Constable Precinct 8. These are our 5-year employees. Let's give them a hand. Thank you very much. Now for our 10-year employees. Stacy Berger, Domestic Relations. Catherine Colquitt, Public Health. Jennifer Crawford, Domestic Relations. Deetra Ferguson, Criminal Courts Administration. Anna Fry, Criminal District Attorney's Office. Damien Garrett, County Auditor's Office. Joanne Gray, Housing Department. Jaleesa Hawkins, Sheriff's Department. Lynn Hickson III, Sheriff's Department. Travis Johnson, Sheriff's Department. Deetra Keel, Medical Examiner's Office. Abram Oliver, Public Health. Patrick Wilson, Facilities Management. And Amanda Young, County Clerk's Office. These are our 10-year employees. Now for our 15-year employees. Katrina Brummett, Sheriff's Department. Ernest Childers, Sheriff's Department. Roger Crutcher, Sheriff's Department. Ciceron Glover, Sheriff's Department.
Excellent.
Angela Price, Sheriff's Department. Tara Ray, District Clerk's Office. Kenneth Reynolds, Sheriff's Department. Simon Rocca, Facilities Management. Roger Russell, Sheriff's Department. Laura Sanchez, Domestic Relations. Gary Smith, Precinct 2. Ronald Tucker, Sheriff's Department. And Reginald Washington, Sheriff's Department. These are our 15-year employees. Let's give them a hand. Now for our 20-year employees, Calvin Baker, Sheriff's Department. Heather Bayer, Probate Court Number 1. David Bowles, Constable Precinct 2. Nina Carty, Information Technology. John Carty, Information Technology. Roosevelt Collins, Juvenile Services. Dominga Garay, Public Health. Jana Jenkins, Tax Office. Tim Lemire, Juvenile Services. George Malone, Sheriff's Department. Jennifer Matthews, Sheriff's Department. David Partain, Pretrial Services. Raul Rodriguez, Sheriff's Department. Rufus Runnels, Sheriff's Department. Stephen Salis, Sheriff's Department. Jerry Tabay, Sheriff's Department. Lenora Vargas, Sheriff's Department. This is a busy month for the Sheriff's Department. Ricky Vaughn, Information Technology. And Lydia Volumil, Juvenile. Okay, go ahead. From Juvenile Services. These are our 20-year employees. Let's give them a hand. Now for our 25-year employees, I had an opportunity to talk with most of these folks. The most are it would have concerned you had you been here and I hadn't talked with you. Don Cannon is our first from the Sheriff's Department, 25 years. Is Don here? Okay, she's in the patrol division, and I expected her to be here, so I'm a little surprised, but that's okay. We won't get after her too much. Now, next was Melanie Mann, and she's out of the office until the end of this week. She's celebrating 25 years, and she is in the criminal district attorney's office in the felony support area. So when you see Dawn and Melanie, be sure and thank them for their 25 years of service. Next is Annette Morris. She's in the public health area, and she's out until September. So we got a good run of luck going here. So our 25-year employees didn't make it, but I want you to be sure and congratulate Dawn and Melody and Annette for their 25 years of service. We've got a real run going here. Next is Clifford Johnson, and I talked with him this morning. He is in East Texas on vacation. And he's been with the county for 30 years. I think they're beginning to say, okay, on our anniversaries, we're just going to take vacations. We're not going to go down there and listen to the judge mispronounce our names. I've had enough of this. Next is Chris Roberson, the county clerk. Is Chris here? Where's Chris? Stand up. We finally have one of you here. Now, Chris started out as a part-timer in the assumed names area and then went to marriage licenses and data entry. Now she is in county court at law number 3. When I asked her about her more memorable moments, and I told this the last time, but most of y'all probably weren't here, or if you were, you need to hear it again. She said I was a shy person when I started out in this area, but I met many people, and they kind of brought me out of that shyness. She said, I do remember from time to time having the opportunity to issue licenses to minors, but she says, I will never forget the time when a minor, now get this down, kind of diagram it, just get ready to diagram this in your head. The minor daughter married the mother's ex-husband after the mother gave permission. And I want that to sink in. And we're not even in Arkansas. She said she still remembered that.
Yes.
What Chris has said that she enjoyed the most was the people and the environment that she's had a chance to work around, the closeness of everyone that she works with. She now has a grandson and a granddaughter. Last time, 5 years ago, she had a grandson. She now has a granddaughter who's 3. Her daughter's graduated and has gone to college on a basketball scholarship, I believe you said. She lost her husband in December. Today would have been his birthday. And so, Chris, we appreciate very much the 30 years of service you've given to Tarrant County. Thank you. Next is Debbie Spoontz from Juvenile Services, 30 years. Started in Juvenile Services, spent a couple of years in intake, placement services. Now is a supervisor. When I asked her about her memories, it was the favorite part was working with the kids and the fact that she's seen an awful lot of changes. What she likes most is the employees, the people she's had a chance to work with, the security and the support. And she said, again, it's a department that lets you make your own decisions, supports the people who work there and lets them make their own decisions. She said she got hired because she liked having an opportunity to work with runaways. And that's something that was a passion. When I talked with her this time and asked her kind of about the last 4 years, she said kids are a lot more challenging. Some of the issues that she's seeing, some of the things that are going on are a lot more challenging than what they were in the past. She has a new cat. She got a new cat last year. Her mom just turned 98.
Wow.
So I think she's beginning to kind of look a little bit toward retirement and maybe spending a little bit more time with her mom and having that opportunity. Debbie, we really want to thank you for the 30 years of service you've given to Tarrant County. Thank you. Last is, now I called you Faye West, but is it Dorothy or is it Faye? Dorothy Faye. Well, okay, so it's both of them. You must be out of East Texas, because we're all, I'm Benny Glenn. Especially when my mom would get mad at me, I was always Benny Glenn. Louisiana. Well, that's getting close enough. Started in the DA's office as a temp, spent about 3 or 4 months there, moved over to public health, and has spent her entire career in public health in the WIC program. She said, I guess she was about the same time as Ann. Year apart. She said the memorable moments were the clients and the fact that there was something new just about every day as she's worked there. She said, I love the people that I have a chance to meet. They're from all walks of life. And she said, I just have really enjoyed that part of it. Now, she's not a talker. She's kind of bashful, and I kind of had to pull. Now, why are they laughing? So have you cured it? So you finally cured it after a few years. You finally got the cure on that deal. When I asked her what had kind of occurred over the last 5 years, she said, first off, I never thought that I'd be here this long. She said, I've seen a tremendous amount of changes in the system. And I can just imagine that over 35 years in the WIC program, there's probably been a few changes. She now has a 3-year-old grandson who keeps her very, very busy. And in fact, she said, when my kids were growing up, I took them to Disney World, and she said, my grandson is now asking about Mickey, and I think it's about time for me to take him.
You tell her.
I told her, I said, I just went there a couple of weeks ago, and the 4-year-old realized it. So I think 4-year-olds are, but I would strongly suggest that you let them get naps, because we didn't do too well on the naps. And by the end of the week, that 4-year-old was a little terror. I'm going to catch it for that. I can just tell right now. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'll have a text from my son, my daughter-in-law, and most importantly from my wife before too long. Dorothy Fay, thank you for the 35 years of service that you've given to this county. We appreciate you very, very much. As I said in the beginning, this was 985 years of service to the county. And again, I cannot even begin to tell you how much we appreciate you and what a difference you make in the way folks look at the county, the way you treat them, regardless of what scenario it is that brings them before you on any given day. So thank you very much. There are refreshments back in 504C. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you for your service. I am going to move that we receive and file.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Get your campaign report back. Core members, you have before you our consent agenda. Move approval of the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the court, we have 4 additional items to bring to you this morning. The first one is we're requesting that the court receive and file the single audit report for the fiscal year which ended September 30th, 2017.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, I'm going to skip down to item number 4 because item 2 and 3, Ms. McMillan is going to present. So if we can go to item number 4 very quickly, we are requesting that the Commissioners Court approve and sign an order prohibiting outside burning within the unincorporated areas of Tarrant County for a period of 90 days from today or until that order is repealed by the Commissioners Court.
Move for approval.
Second. I have a question.
Yes, and
What is the law? It seems kind of silly to me that we're approving this, but we're going to allow people to buy fireworks and we're in the middle of a drought and fire danger is as high as it's probably been in a long time. Well, how does that happen?
it's 2 different statutes to begin with. And
2 different lobbyists?
What's that?
Did you say 2 different lobbyists?
No, 2 different statutes, yes. Well,
Oh, okay.
so I'll try to explain it. The DA or the fire marshal can also chime in. Randy, why don't you come up here to back me up on this? The burn ban issue has been with us for a fairly long time.
Right.
And there is a index that is generated by the Texas Forest Service, and that index is 575. And once we get past that index, then we're authorized to do the burn ban. There has to be a declaration that's made on this, and then we move forward on that. In some parts of Tarrant County, last week we were under 575, but moving very closely to surpassing 575. I think we're up to a little over 600.
638.
638. And so whenever we have that process, then we come to you and we ask you to place a burn ban on. So that deals with the burn ban. When it comes to the prohibition against selling and popping or use? The use of fireworks, it's a totally different statute. The judge can declare an emergency, but that emergency can only last for 60 hours. Once that occurs, after that, then it has to go to the governor's office, and the governor has to declare another type of emergency.
Excuse me. The governor's office has to weigh in to approve the action of the judge or to extend the action
To
of the
extend
judge?
the action. Okay. We began to look at this sometime Friday, and because our other indexes were somewhat lower, and it was so close to the 4th of July, that the prohibition of selling fireworks by statute will end tomorrow night at midnight. And so if we would have implemented it on a Friday, that 60 hours would have expired prior to July 4th, and those sales would have gone on again. And we probably would have been involved in some type of legal action. We needed to make sure that we could defend that legal action. And because we didn't even get to the point of the total county being under a burn ban, we made a decision that we were just going to basically not try to do the prohibition of sale and usage.
Yep.
And
We started that discussion really on Thursday evening,
Yeah.
and we talked with Randy. Just as GK has mentioned, I have the ability to have put a ban on sale and use for the 72 hours, and then we immediately notify the governor, and we ask for him to agree with the declaration of a disaster and to continue that that prohibition against the sale and use. In talking with Randy, and then also with our emergency management, David McCurdy, we decided that it was just not appropriate at this point in time. We've done this once before, and we were sued, but the court upheld our decision and supported that because we had the statistics and the numbers were there, and in talking with Randy, come on forward. I mean, we just didn't feel like, go ahead and.
Your Honor, we were also back in 2005 when we did that. We were under a state and a federal wildfire disaster declaration. So we, along with 17 other counties, were the ones that did that in December. Since then, we've not had to do that. We got close in 2012, but our conditions changed and we didn't have to do it. What I was trying to tell the judge in GK Thursday was we don't have the conditions to qualify for that. The judge, I assume, can do what the judge wants to do, but we didn't have the material to back up what he wanted to do, and it would surely end us up in court, and we would stand a good chance of losing, and then we lose that precedent that we have if we ever need to do it again. This is an unusual time, I'll agree. Usually, you've been on court a while, usually about the second week after 4th of July is when we come to you for a burn ban. But this year, our drought index and has just climbed up right before. And it's just, I didn't want to do it, but I have to do it because we're starting to see fires. We're not having a lot of fires like our outside agencies are in other counties, but we're right there. City of Fort Worth Sunday had 20 fires. We didn't have any out in the county. So if we'd have enacted that executive order, we might not have been able to back it up because we don't have the fires to prove it. So,
but we were looking at it, appropriately so, and we were just not where we needed to be in order to be able to pull that trigger. But again, and remember that when there's basically for the July the 4th and January the 1st, 2 weeks prior to that time they can sell fireworks, and as GK mentioned, it's up until midnight of that particular day. There are other holidays that if we as a court choose to allow the sale, we can do that, but we have never chosen to do that on, I think it's Texas Independence Day, it's Cinco de Mayo.
Memorial Day,
and we just never chosen to expand our fireworks ordinances to allow for sale or use on those particular holidays.
So the sale and the use of fireworks are prohibited until tomorrow?
No,
No.
they're not. That's
They're
what we
not.
chose
Okay.
not to do.
Okay.
Because we, again, as Randy just mentioned, the stats were not such that would have supported us to have done that, and we would have in all likelihood been, as we were the last time we did it. We were sued, but the last time we did it, we had, as Randy mentioned, all of the stats were in place to support what we did.
So
Question.
Yes, sir.
The stats were not in place on Thursday and Friday. Are they in place now?
No, sir.
The stats for the burn ban are,
The burn ban, but not the sale and the use.
Okay,
We're just not going to be able to get there.
okay.
And just to give you a kind of a historical deal on the 2005, when we did it, okay, then after that, and you mentioned lobbyists, the fireworks manufacturers changed the rules, and that's where the 60 hours came into. Before the 60-hour rule, which took place in 2007 or 8, we could not have to go to the governor. Fireworks manufacturers put that in there. So, and also we didn't have an indication from the governor this year what he was going to do. So it was, and we weren't there.
bottom line, we weren't there, so there was no reason.
We're there
was
for
not.
a burn ban, and we need it. So
We have a motion and a second on the burn ban. Is there any other questions or any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, Ms. McMillan is going to do items 2 and 3.
And I want to just reiterate, that is a burn ban that we just implemented, and even though we had a lot of discussion about the sale and use of fireworks, we have done nothing that would prohibit the sale and use of fireworks. McMillan.
Judge, Commissioners, we're asking today that you consider approval of a resolution and the participation agreements which provide for Tarrant County and Tarrant County Hospital District participation in funding of the City of Sampson Park Tax Increment Financing Reinvestment Zone Number 1. You may recall last month the City of Sampson Park provided an update on the status of this 179-acre TIF that runs along Jacksboro Highway and Azle Avenue and is expected to fund approximately $6.6 million in infrastructure and street improvements over the life of the zone. The City of Sampson Park is contributing 100% of its increment from within the zone and has asked the county to participate at a rate of 80%, up to a maximum of $916,574, and the hospital district's contribution will be at 50%, up to a maximum of $527,486 for the remaining 20 years of the zone. So we're asking for your approval of these participation agreements.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I am assuming that Commissioner Johnson is supportive of this.
Yes, he is.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And the next item we have on the agenda is Commissioners Court is being asked to approve the use of tax-exempt revenue bonds issued by the Industrial Development Authority of the County of La Paz, Arizona, and the maximum principal amount of $85 million to be used by Charter School Solutions to finance certain educational facilities located around the state of Texas and in Tarrant County, including the Harmony Science Academy in Euless. This is strictly for IRS tax-exempt purposes only. This issuance is by the La Paz County Authority and on behalf of the Charter School Solutions only.
I move approval. This is just a recognition that they will be doing business in our jurisdiction.
The IRS code requires that the approval be granted by a governing body where the facilities are located.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Tidwell?
We have one item that we're asking the court to consider this morning, and that is to receive and file the Tarrant County financial statements for the period ended May 30th, 2018.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Glenn?
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning, Ms. Glenn.
Good morning, and thank you. We have one additional item, that's item 2. We're asking the court to approve a double fill for information technology. Mr. Arfor is requesting a double fill effective July 9th. The individual who's ultimately hired will be able to work side by side with the current individual who occupies the position, and that individual plays a critical role as that individual supports the SAP payroll module. And so we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for the two of them to work side by side before the current incumbent retires, the early part of next year. The impact, if approved by the court, to the general fund will be a little bit more than $81,000, including fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham? I'll put the hat up just because you were runner-up. It was great.
It was a valiant effort.
My ship is still floating around the harbor.
Trying to figure out where that...
I touched the screen. I thought I could catch the darn thing myself, but...
I know.
That's kind of like how many Aggies does it take to change a light bulb? 3. How many Razorbacks can miss the same fly ball? 3.
Yep.
Take it like a man. I did it to you. Arizona did the same thing. So shut up and do your job.
Go right ahead, sir.
He's back.
Were you gone? We have three items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2018-079. It's our semi-annual contract for copy paper, stock paper, and envelopes. Recommendation would be to award a per enterprise basis, awarding to the primary and secondary vendors meeting all specifications as shown in your court communique.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item is, again, a bid award recommendation for bid 2018-098. This is a bid for miscellaneous medical supplies. Recommendation would be to award a per enterprise basis, awarding to the primary and secondary vendors as shown in the court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Last item in regards to RFQ 2018-091, annual contract for temporary health care personnel for the health department. We are seeking approval on the ranking order and seeking approval to conduct negotiations with the three vendors as shown in your court communique. If necessary, we'll start with number one. If we don't reach an agreement, we'll go to two and then three.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Happy Fourth. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you, Jack. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have an interlocal agreement.
Have an interlocal agreement with the city of Crowley. The DA's office on board with this? We are. I move approval of item 8K, 1A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? There appearing to be none. Then we will move on to the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, I'm passing around a memo that I've drafted and addressed to you, and this concerns some suggested strategies as it relates to the consideration of JPS Capital Improvement Program. I'd like to go through the memo itself, and the purpose of the memo is to outline a process and some thoughts and some information that staff believes that we need to consider if the court intends to consider a bond package for JPS. So just some very brief history. You may remember that in February of 18 that the Blue Ribbon Committee that was appointed by this Commissioner's Court came forward with recommendations as to the role or the health concerns of the county as a whole, and also JPS's role in those efforts. They did present 7 recommendations at the time, and express that there was a significant need to address those particular issues. You also might remember that in March of 18 that our office sent you an email that identified the costs of those 7 items, and those were fully loaded costs, not only the construction and architectural engineering services, but also the equipment and elements that would totally consume that entire package and literally have it as a turnkey operation. That total amount was about approximately $1.2 billion. So since that time, one of the elements that were part of one of the 7 was the need for a cancer center. And you might remember that last week we actually approved a lease of a cancer center facility that JPS found, which was located very close to their campus, and we entered into a lease of that particular center. That was an initial 10-year lease with 2 5-year extensions. So it negated the need for the $30 million that were originally scheduled as far as one of the needs, the cost of one of the needs that the Blue Ribbon Committee developed. Just a point on that, though, is that the district is probably going to need to spend about $5 million to renovate that facility and bring it up to a level that they can occupy and utilize for a cancer center. And the district, the board, and JPS administration believes that with that particular rental and upgrade of that facility, that will answer their needs for the future. That $5 million, the district itself has indicated that they are going to take that from current available revenues and not part of the bond package. So the court is interested in moving forward with an election in November of 2018. There are a number of issues which we need to consider, and the Board of Managers need to consider also. It's important to realize this, that the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee defined what the needs were of the district. It's going to be the responsibility of the board and then finally the Commissioner's Court to determine how much of those needs we're going to address with the bond package. So while the needs may be $1.2 billion, that number may be less depending on what the board and the court finally decide. So as we move through this process, there are certain things that staff believes that the court needs to consider. And let me say before I start going through these that over the last 2 months, we have been working on a weekly basis with JPS and then the administration at JPS to ensure that we're not just beginning to collect this data, that the data is being collected and we're at the point of finalizing, not to the point where that you have a decision you can make right away, but you have the data available to analyze, to come up with whatever decision the court would like to make on this. So these are some of the things that we believe are important for the court to consider. First of all, we believe that there's a real need for the district to come forward and identify cash that they currently have available that we can utilize to address some of the Blue Ribbon Committee recommendations. And you might remember we've spoken to you about the fact that there is a future fund that JPS has created. There's approximately $120 million in that particular fund that was set aside and funded over the last 2.5 years to address these particular needs. JPS also has additional revenue in their system, and we have asked JPS to make a determination how much of that additional revenue that they can bring forward to add to the $120 million. And I believe that JPS is very close to coming to us probably next Tuesday and identifying that amount. Now, I know we're going to have a lot of discussions about that, but they have done what I consider a critical analysis on it, because one of the things that is important, at least we believe is important, that regardless of what these amounts are, JPS must maintain a very strong financial position. Their bond rating, and I believe they just received an upgrade on their bond rating, is a very high bond rating. They're at AA and AA+. The county's at AAA, but hospital districts tend not to ever get a AAA rating. So they are pretty much at the top of that. And a lot of that is based on their cash reserves. So if there's cash reserves they can bring, in addition to the 120, we need to consider that. At the same time, we need to make sure that the district is very strong financially.
Could I say something at
Absolutely.
this point?
Absolutely.
This paragraph about available debt service payment requirements, I think we are all committed to a bond program that does not require an increase in the hospital district's tax rate.
That's correct.
I am concerned. I know that there is an ability to transfer dollars from the Maintenance and Operations Fund into the Debt Service Fund. And I am not opposed to doing that, with the caveat that transferring money from maintenance and operations does not require the hospital district to cut health care services to the people that depend upon the hospital district for those services. So I would ask that we be careful in making any transfers from M&O, maintenance and operations, to the debt service sinking fund, that we be certain that those transfers not cause the hospital district to have to decrease health care services in order to fund that transfer.
And Commissioner, as we have been working with the district over the last several months and talking about this same exact thing, we've kept those elements in mind. And you know, we just need to see basically how much that we can bring over from M&O, and without hurting the services and the direction that the hospital district is engaging in.
That's my request.
And I guess one of the comments that I'd make about this cash available, I know I've talked with you for several weeks, and I'm very hopeful that they're going to be here next Tuesday with those numbers, because I've been asking for that.
Yes.
And I don't want to in any way negatively impact their ratings either, but usually they will say they need X number of days, and I believe that we have been well in excess of those days as far as the amount of cash that we have in reserves. And I would just make the point very strongly to the chairman of the board, who is sitting behind you, that I have no problem with there being a cash reserve that will meet and will not negatively impact that, but I think that there's a whole lot more than 120 million over there, and I'm going to be very disappointed if the staff comes in here and says we got 120 million, that's all we got.
We've already worked with staff, and they've increased that amount, but we've asked them to go back and to sharpen their pencils more, and we believe that this will be a major discussion item with the court. And it's not something that we just bring a straight number to you, but we intend for you to look at those numbers and come to a comfort level.
Well, that's why I want their day spend. I want to know what the rating companies look at, what they're looking for. I know when talking with NTTA, there are certain bond requirements that they have. If we anticipate there being bond requirements, I'd like to know what we anticipate. So that may be Hilltop or whatever First Southwest calls themselves now.
Right.
If they've got an idea of what was going to be expected, then I'd like to know that.
Sure.
And I don't want somebody to come up here and say, well, we think it's going to be this much. I want somebody to have talked with somebody and have a pretty good feel for it.
We understand. Okay. So, Commissioner Brooks, you brought up the availability of debt service payment requirements. So let's talk about it a little bit more. The hospital district doesn't have much debt, and they only have about $30 million worth of debt. And for an organization that large, that's nothing. And so their INS rate to pay for that $30 million is very, very small. And if we are going to sell debt through a bond package, something that is voter approved, and with the direct and a clear understanding that we don't raise the tax rate, then in order to do that, there's going to have to be some movement of M&O debt initially, M&O funds over to INS. And so we have asked JPS administration to look at their budget and try to make a determination as to how much that can be. And so we need to understand.
Without cutting service.
Absolutely. And, of all the discussions that we've had with JPS on that, cutting services has never been a discussion item. That's a given. That's a given. And so anyway, so I think that's important for you all to understand and to factor in as we go through this process.
Now,
Yes, sir.
to fund the debt service,
Yes.
basically, we're gonna have to count on the increased tax revenue, not as a result of an increased tax rate, but as a result of an appreciated property value.
That's correct.
Right.
And new construction.
And new construction, right.
Right. Mhm.
JPS is operating on a 1% net margin, a very thin margin, right? What comes up must come down eventually. Economy is up right now, but it will come down. And when it does, that may present a big challenge, you see. So whatever we do, just be sure that we anticipate those kind of things.
So let me try to address that for you, at least partially address it. When the county sells debt, and we normally don't sell 100% of our debt all at once, okay? I might remind you that in 2006, we passed a $431 million bond package. We didn't go out and sell $431 million worth of debt. We staggered that sale over a 10-year period.
10 years.
And we had a financial model that would support the sale over a 10-year period. To your point, Commissioner, when we factor in the AV growth, okay, and you have to do that, we are very, very conservative. Hilltop, First Southwest, we try to factor in a AV growth that is no more than 3%. 3% every year. And the reason is because if we have a growth that's higher than that, that begins to offset those years when you don't have a growth of 3%. And I've been here a long time, and we've done a lot of debt, and with us using that percentage growth, we've never had a situation where that we didn't collect enough in our INS rate to pay our debt, to make good on our debt payments.
Commissioner Figgins?
Yeah. I follow what Andy's talking about and agree to some point, but I would think typically hospitals are not as dramatically, healthcare is not as dramatically affected in up or down, to a certain extent, economy. If you get a very, very bad economy, yes, but fluctuations down. Your biggest concern doesn't need to be that. Your biggest concern needs to be the interest rate that are rising. Mm-hmm. And the sooner we can do this, the better on interest rates and inflation. Those will totally, if you don't get those right, you're going to, it doesn't matter if you make money or not. You're going to lose.
Absolutely.
If you end up having to delay and interest rates are headed back up to normal. When you look at historic normal interest rates, we're still way below. So that's our big issue.
And the construction inflation, our consultants told us that the 2 years, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have waited, but the 2 years cost us $150 million.
Right, exactly. So, anyway, I see those as our biggest issues right now.
There is, as each one of you know, because at the county level we deal with this more often than the district does. You're absolutely correct, Commissioner. Those issues are something that there's not true clarity to look down the road, but there are things that we can do to mitigate those. And so we fully expect that as we develop this, and if the voters approve, we sell debt, that we manage that debt just like the county manages its debt. So let's talk a little bit about M&O costs. We also know that whenever we add new facilities, that there are additional M&O costs that are associated with those facilities. We've asked JPS to begin to look, or not begin to look, but to look at what those new M&O costs might be. And that does several things. It allows us to develop the scope of a construction project, because if you build it, you have to operate it, that type of thing. JPS administration has brought in a third-party consultant that are professionals at this, and they are working on those M&O projections now. And over the next 3 or 4 weeks, you will be getting more and more information on those. So when we talk about the district's revenue, Commissioner Fickus, you brought up a good point as far as AV values. You know, a lot of people don't realize it, but when you look at the total amount of revenue that it takes to run the hospital, only about 39% of that revenue stream is from local property taxes. There's other revenues that the hospital aggressively looks at in order to meet its budget, and so the whole deal is that we have to continually work with the district, not only to ensure we have a strong AV base, which we do, but also that we continue to look for new and expanded resources when it comes to paying not only for debt service, because debt service is going to be pulled out of the tax rate, but also for the maintenance and operation of those facilities. And then finally, I think that as you take all of these issues that we talked about today, that at the end of it, it'll become very clear what our strategy is, our business model that we're going to use to move forward. That business model needs to be jointly developed by both the board and the court. The court will have the final say on that model. But I believe that what's important now, and unless you all object, I'm going to be asking the CEO of the hospital and also the chairman of the board of managers to look at those 6 remaining items and prioritize those items. Because the Blue Ribbon Committee said we need all of these. But the body that would know better than anyone else what those priorities should be is the Board of Managers, and through their administrative staff, and then your appointees. And so we need to have that information also, because we don't need to have it next week, but by the time we get to a point where that the court needs to make a decision if you're going to go ahead and call a bond package and what that package is going to look like, you need to have that information. And so we're going to do that moving forward. If in fact
next week may not be critical, but time is wasting,
and we're going to talk about that.
We need to be proceeding with all deliberate speed.
Absolutely. And since you brought that up, Commissioner, if we call a November election, then this court has to call for that November election by August 20th. August 20th is the drop dead. In this memo, you have an attachment that bond counsel has prepared for us, and it shows the dates and the activities that need to occur, not only leading up to August 20th, but also after August 20th. We've spoken with you previously about the month of July, and we have said that July is going to be an extremely busy month. I know we're going to be out of court for 1 week, but it's our intent to have work sessions with the court and with the board so that we can hammer this stuff out to get you all the information that you need to make a decision. And we are well on our way to doing this. But what I wanted to do today was to lay this out as a process. Not there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And Judge, you brought up a good one as far as what kind of detail you want to see on available cash. And I know all of you want to see that. and we're going to have those discussions with court. This is going to be an item that will probably remain on our agenda until we make a determination if we're going to make that call or not. I will again tell you that I'm going to need you all to be available, and you've already committed to it, to do work sessions that are outside of the regular Tuesday meetings. And so I think we're in a point in our timeline that we can accomplish this. We have a lot of information to give you, and now you know where the drop-dead dates are. And
In terms of the business model that you proposed, I think that asking the Board of Managers to prioritize their needs, that's the proper way to go.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I guess as I'm looking down this list on attachment A, the first item I see is the parking garage, which is something that we can look at as a public-private partnership.
Absolutely.
I see the finish, and I'm not quite sure about this. It says finish out above option 2 shell floors for an additional 120 beds. So I don't know is that 64 million, is that something that we could postpone but not prohibit if we choose not to? It doesn't stop us from eventually doing that. That's 64 million that we'll spend at some point in time. The same thing with the next number down.
We need to look at what it's going to cost us
to postpone.
To postpone, correct.
And the same thing with the add one, when you say completed floor, I want to make sure that we have the ability to do as far as that we build the structures, but how many floors are we going to have that might not be completed?
Right.
So that's those three numbers in that first section. Down in the next one, as far as the psychiatric hospital, again, the finish out above shell floor and the add 2 complete bed floors. And I think what those are those are the things that the Blue Ribbon Committee said needed to be done in addition to what was originally recommended by the Board of Managers in the first set.
Yes, and it gives options, and basically the options is a determination of what percentage of the population are we going to be serving. If you go back to the Blue Ribbon Committee reports, none of these will be a full complement for all citizens, okay? And the mental health facility is a good example of that. Okay. And so if we have the money to finish out some floors, then that would be the thing to do because of what Commissioner Fick has said, the cost of construction and the interest and things such as that.
The other thing that I would just say is I've seen reference to 1.5 billion. That has never been a number that we've talked about. 1.2 is the most that I have ever seen. And now with the purchase or with the lease versus the buying or the building of that, we are now below the 1.2 billion. So, if somebody sees anything more or above 1.2, somebody ought to raise their hand and say, this is wrong. Because we've never, ever had an estimate put before us that talked about more than the 1.2 billion, 1,205,505,739.
Yes.
So to say 1.5 is being not quite truthful.
In the strategy section, GK,
Yes, sir.
the focus tends to be on a successful bond election. I say this before and I'll say it again. Part of the Citizen Blue Ribbon Committee recommendation includes that JPS take leadership in working with other entities, MHMR, public health, and so forth, to come up with a strategy to improve the well-being and the behavioral health of the residents of Tarrant County.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know that is a much longer approach and more complex. But somehow we have to get some commitment at the high level for that because folks on the ground, people like Vinny and his team are ready to roll. They just need some clear direction from the leadership. So that high-level strategy to make that happen is still needed to be vetted and discussed and decided upon.
Right. And Commissioner, we agree with you. Remember, the Blue Ribbon Committee's task was the health needs and wellness needs of the community and what role JPS plays in that. And this document here only addresses the capital improvement.
I understand.
But
I
that
just want to
does not
stress
mean-
that point because building a new behavioral health, for example, the needs for behavioral health beds are so great in Tarrant County that an additional 200 beds, we have about 98 beds now, we're talking about building 298 more, right? It will be filled up. It will be filled up in a matter of months, okay? And then we back to square one, you see? So we got to work on the front end to reduce the need to check into the behavioral health facility.
Right.
So it has to be a dual approach because the last thing we need is to build a bigger capacity to hold our problem.
Right.
You see.
Understand.
Yeah.
Understand. So,
And bearing in mind that the safety valve for the mental health facility is the county jail.
yes, sir.
And that's the situation that we're trying to address, that the county jail should not be the place where it should not be the largest provider of mental health services in the county.
That's correct. If you have any other comments later after court or during the week as we move forward, please give those to my office and we'll incorporate them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief King.
There being no business right now, then we'll recess our open meeting, proceed to close to discuss items exempted under Section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. From our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
GK, there's can't get that and put it on our website.